and welcome to the Promotion and Relegation Show. The regular season is now over, and we are now advancing into the Conference Championship Week, where 4 Tier 1 teams will guarantee their spot in a BCS Bowl game, and 1 Tier 3 champion will claim their right to be promoted into Tier 2. We know just about everyone that will be moving up and down, except for those in those Tier 2 conferences that battled it out this week to either be promoted or to stay out of a relegation zone spot. So let's get right into it and start out west with the Mountain West Conference. For the Mountain West, we have known for a long while that BYU is going to be relegated out of the Pac-12 and into the Mountain West. And we know that Fresno State is going to be sitting in the relegation zone spot, even with their win over Billings this week. We just needed to find out who was going to be the team that is promoted and replace BYU in the Mountain West. As a reminder of what was at stake this week for the 3 teams involved, being the University of Kansas, the University of Alaska, and Washington State. All teams were tied in first place going into this week at 7-1, with Kansas leading the tiebreaker, having beaten both Alaska and Washington State. Washington State and Alaska faced off against each other, and the winner would need Kansas to lose to California if they were to be the team that would be promoted. All Kansas had to do was beat Cal, and they would be promoted. A loss would keep them in the Mountain West. Washington State was able to be victorious early in the week and would then need to wait to see if Kansas were to lose to Cal. But that was not to be, as Kansas worked Cal to earn their promotion to the Pac-12 and Tier 1. Fresno State now sits at the bottom of the conference, waiting to see if Northern Illinois can beat Utah State in the Conference USA Championship in order for them to stay in the Mountain West. We now move east and to the Central region, where the Big Ten finished their games with 2 teams playing for promotion and 3 teams trying to stay out of the relegation zone spot at the bottom of the conference. Those bottom teams will have to wait and see the result of the Conference USA Championship game to find out if they are to be relegated or if they are lucky enough to stay in the Big Ten. A Northern Illinois win in that game would send the team that finishes in last down to the Conference USA. And as for Wisconsin and UTEP, they were playing for their chance at taking SMU's spot in the Big 12 after SMU finished in last place in that conference and are going to be relegated into Tier 2. For Wisconsin, they had complete control of their destiny to promotion, sitting alone in first place with only 1 loss. That loss being to UTEP. UTEP would need to win their game against Tulsa and would need Wisconsin to lose theirs to Minnesota if they were to earn promotion. UTEP easily did their job by killing Tulsa by 46 points. And Wisconsin would end up finishing off Minnesota, which will earn them promotion to the Big 12. UTEP will narrowly miss out on promotion for the 2nd year in a row with that Wisconsin win. And now looking at the battle to stay out of the bottom with Tulsa, UTSA, and Iowa. We know that Tulsa got killed by UTEP, so for them to stay safe, they only need UTSA to lose. UTSA would be safe if they were to win their game against Texas Tech, but if they were to lose, they would need Iowa to lose their game, or else they're going to be the team that finishes at the bottom. And for Iowa to stay safe, they would now need a win against Tulane, and they would be safe. But if they were to lose, they would need UTSA to win their game, and they would end up being safe. If they were to lose their game and UTSA loses theirs, then Iowa would find themselves at the bottom of that 3-way tie. The bad news for Iowa is they did end up losing to Tulane, which is one of the best teams in the conference, which means they need a UTSA win in order to stay alive and out of the relegation zone spot. which now means that UTSA is now safe with the Tulsa loss and whether they win or lose. Tulsa now awaits the result of the UTSA game on the edge of their seats because they need UTSA to lose their game. If UTSA were to win, that would mean that Tulsa and Iowa would tie, which would put Tulsa on the bottom. And lucky for Tulsa, because UTSA would end up losing in a close one, which will mean that Iowa will finish at the bottom, with all three teams losing this week, which keeps them on the bottom. They will now wait to see if Northern Illinois are able to beat Utah State in the conference championship game. If they do, then Iowa is going to be the team from the Big Ten being relegated to the Conference USA Central Division. So now moving to the Southeast region and the American Conference. We know that no team is going to be relegated out of this conference because Temple from the Northeast earned the automatic promotion due to Virginia being ineligible for promotion. But we still need to figure out who is going to replace UCF, which is the team that will be relegated from the SEC. There were two teams that could earn that promotion to Tier 1, being Wake Forest and South Carolina. All Wake Forest needed to do was to win against bottom seller team Duke, and they would clinch promotion. But if they were to lose, they would need South Carolina to lose as well in order to be promoted. South Carolina, all they needed to do was beat a decent Mississippi State team and have Wake Forest lose to Duke in order to earn them promotion. Duke would actually end up upsetting Wake Forest, which now means that Wake Forest needs to rely on Mississippi State to come away with a victory to be promoted. And for South Carolina, all they need to do is win, and they're going to be the ones that earn it. However, South Carolina would end up losing to Mississippi State, which means that Wake Forest will just barely survive after being upset and will end up being promoted to the SEC. And that now leaves us with the Northeast region and their Tier 2 conference being the MAC. This was a fairly uneventful week for the MAC because they already had their champion and the team that would finish last and be relegated to the Sun Belt in the Tier 3 conferences. However, Miami, Ohio was playing for a perfect conference record this week against Central Michigan, which they ended up keeping by beating them easily. Miami, Ohio was easily the class of the conference this year, being the first team in Tier 2 to beat everyone in their conference in their pursuit of promotion. Eastern Michigan continued their losing skid, losing to Western Michigan, only making their relegation feel worse. And that will end up wrapping up the Tier 2 conferences in this promotion and relegation update for the Week 15 week. But we still need to figure out who is going to be promoted from the Conference USA and the rest of the conference championships. So we will now go through each game to find out who the champion of each Tier 1 and Tier 3 conferences are going to be. The first games that are up in Conference Championship Week are the Tier 3 conferences, starting with the Sun Belt. Temple has already earned promotion to Tier 2 and the MAC, but Virginia and Temple are playing for that Sun Belt trophy and bragging rights. And after going down 10 into the fourth quarter, Temple was able to pull away and hold Virginia out of the end zone to fully earn first place in the conference and promotion. Virginia was able to move the ball well in this game, but was unable to execute drives effectively, only converting 36% of the third down conversions and only coming away with 10 points on 3 red zone trips, while Temple scored all 28 of theirs in the red zone on their 4 attempts. Virginia will be disappointed by that result, but will get another shot at the Sun Belt Trophy next year as they will be staying in Tier 3. So we now move on to the Conference USA Championship game, which will feature a promotion to either the Mountain West or the Big Ten in this promotion game. Both these teams have already met up once this year, with Utah State being the team to give Northern Illinois their only loss in conference on the season. Northern Illinois will be looking for revenge in this one with much bigger stakes on the line. And this result wasn't even close, with Utah State asserting their complete dominance, blowing Northern Illinois out. Utah State was able to do whatever they wanted on the offensive side of the ball, and their NFL caliber offensive players. Also, their NFL-ready defensive players also showed out, holding Northern Illinois to only 6 points in meaningful football, with 0 touchdowns allowed. Utah State will now earn promotion into Tier 2 and into the Mountain West, which will send relegation zone team Fresno State down into Tier 3. This will be the second year in a row that the West Division will have a team relegated and promoted in Tier 2 and Tier 3, with the Central Division having no changes. The next game up is going to be the SEC Championship game being played in Atlanta, Georgia. This matchup is between the number 10 and number 7 teams in the nation. Both worked hard in conference play against stiff competition, both going 7-2. Miami will have to face tough competition again, going up against one of the best quarterbacks in the nation with a passer rating of 214. North Carolina is also coming into this game with a top 3 offense and a top 6 defense. But Miami is shown to have a great defense with a top 10 defense and a top 3 pass defense in the nation. And Miami was able to pull off this thriller of a game with a game-winning drive in the final 4 minutes of the game. The Miami defense was able to hold the high-powered North Carolina offense to a respectable amount of yards, but it was Miami's offense that really helped out, going for 460 yards and converting over 50% of their third downs. This will mean that Miami will be the team that will play in the Sugar Bowl against most likely the loser of the Pac-12 championship game, where the champion of that game could see themselves into the national title game, depending on the BCS rankings. So now we are going to the last 3 games of the conference championship week, with all games being played at the same time. We will look at the Big 12 title game first, with the number 1 team and undefeated Oklahoma, which will be facing off against number 9 Texas A&M. Oklahoma has played a fantastic season and are back again to try and win their Big 12 championship of the dynasty. This time, they will be playing for the national title game. They have been riding on the back of their second-team All-American quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, with a balanced offensive attack that won't stand out, but are extremely efficient with the top 5 scoring offense in the nation. They will be playing against one of the better offenses in the nation, and that is number 2 in scoring and top 5 in offense. They really rely on the pass. One of the things holding them back is the inability to hold onto the ball with a turnover margin that is near the bottom quarter of the NCAA. They'll need to keep that in check to pull off this upset, which they ended up doing after Oklahoma was unable to convert a 2-point conversion to send the game into overtime in the final 7 seconds of the game. Texas A&M did exactly what they needed to do to win, which was to keep a hold of the ball, finishing with 0 turnovers and forcing 2, which gave them short fields to work with and capitalized on. Oklahoma did almost everything right, with an incredible offensive display, but those turnovers are the real killers for them in this one. They will most likely be out of the national title game and will lose their second conference title game in a row. Texas A&M will now play the ACC champion in the Orange Bowl. Our next game that we will look at will be out west in the Pac-12 championship game, featuring what will now be a play-in game for the national title game, with number 3 and number 4 going at it for the second time this season and for the second time in a row in the conference title game. Oregon was able to come away with a win earlier this season, which puts them 2-0 against USC in the past 2 years. USC is also looking for revenge after Oregon knocked them out of the national title game last season in this very game a year ago. USC now gets a second chance at the national championship with the Oklahoma loss. Both teams are led by very qualified quarterbacks. USC has Caleb Williams, who is the first team All-American, and Oregon is led by Ian Hyven, the best dual-threat quarterback in the nation. And both will be trying to lead their team to the national title game. This would be Oregon's second time in a row and would be USC's redemption from last season. And Oregon was able to run away from USC in this one, winning 38-28 after going into the fourth quarter up 38-14. Both offenses had terrific days, but USC was unable to stop the dynamic attack that is Ian Hyven and Heisman hopeful Bucky Irving. Oregon will now be all but assured of their second national title game in a row, this time hoping to win it. It may also be a rematch from last season if Ohio State is able to win their conference title game. And now, speaking of that game, this is the final game of the conference championship week, ending with the ACC championship game between Ohio State and Penn State. Penn State earned this spot after Michigan were unable to beat their rival, and Penn State finished their work by winning. On paper, this is a complete mismatch in favor of Ohio State. Ohio State has looked like the best team in the country all year long. Their offense is unmatched, being the number one offense in the nation, being led by CJ Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba at wide receiver, and the Heisman favorite Trevion Henderson at running back. They also have the best defense in the nation and are a top 10 team in turnover differential. Penn State looks to be outgunned by the talent that Ohio State is able to put onto the field. This will be a huge uphill battle for them in this one. But the talent that Ohio State had doesn't matter in this one, as Penn State pulls a big-time upset, beating Ohio State 26-14. The number one offense in the nation was shut down by Penn State in this one, only going for 230 yards all game. Penn State utilized a fantastic strategy in this one by keeping Ohio State's playmakers off the field and holding onto the ball, which they did for 40 minutes of this game, all while converting 71% of their 21 third down conversions and 3 of 4 on fourth down conversions. This will knock Ohio State out of the national title game, which means we are going to have a new matchup to finish this year off. Not sure who is going to earn that chance to play Oregon in the national title, with the number 1, 2, and 4 teams all losing. One of the conference title losers could find themselves still playing for a national title, or Penn State, sitting at 6, could find their way into that game. Or number 5 Utah, who didn't play in a conference title game, could be the ones that end up making it. But we will find out right now as we advance the weekend look at the BCS Top 15 rankings. And it will be Oregon and Penn State playing for the national title game this year. After beating Ohio State, Penn State will jump all the way to number 2, leapfrogging 2 teams with only 1 loss and another that didn't lose this week in Utah. Granted, they didn't play a game this week. Something of note, though, is the presence of 3 Tier 2 schools in the top 15 rankings, all coming from the Mountain West, from the West region. So now we will preview all the bowl games coming up to wrap this season. Some games of note as we scroll down. Tier 3, Sunbelt champion and newly earning promotion, will be playing Air Force, who's fresh from being relegated out of Tier 2 last season. Another one is the matchup of the Holiday Bowl with two Tier 1 top teams, Oklahoma State and Second Haven, facing off against each other. Boise State is going to be facing off against a former conference team after they earned promotion last season in Rapid City. It should be interesting to see which team has improved more after just one season. USC is going to fall out of the BCS Bowl Games after losing to Oregon in the conference title game, which means that Utah is going to be the team to face Miami in the Sugar Bowl. Another game to watch is the Utah State-Georgia Tech game in the Liberty Bowl. Utah State, a Tier 3 team, is going to be rewarded for earning promotion and the Conference USA title by playing a ranked Tier 1 team. UTEP is going to be facing off against powerhouse Alabama in the Capital One Bowl. UTEP has been so close to promotion for 2 years straight and are going to be rewarded by facing the ever-powerful Crimson Tide. Which will now lead us to the BCS Bowl Games. The first one up is going to be the Rose Bowl, which will be hosted by the Mountain West Conference this year and their champion, the Kansas Jayhawks. They will be facing the American Conference champion, Wake Forest. This is a heavyweight matchup with both teams showing that they are strong contenders. Wake Forest was able to go 10-2 over the course of the season, while Kansas was able to take down two of the top teams in the Mountain West and top 15 teams on their way to being the champions. The next one up is going to be the Fiesta Bowl, which will be hosted by the Big Ten this season and Wisconsin. They will be facing the MAC champion and the first ever Tier 2 team to go undefeated in their conference schedule, the Red Hawks of Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio may not have the flashiest of names like Wisconsin, but you don't just win 11 games in a season and go undefeated in a Tier 2 conference by accident. Miami, Ohio should put up a good game against Wisconsin, even while being the underdog in this one. The first Tier 1 BCS Bowl game is going to be the Sugar Bowl, being hosted by the SEC and their conference champion, Miami. They will be facing off against Pac-12 challenger Utah after they finished in second place and finished with a higher ranking than USC after USC lost to Oregon. Utah has been a quiet powerhouse this whole season. They have gone through this season doing their job and winning games. They played against tough competition in the Pac-12, facing two teams that could be playing for the national title game, with one of them actually playing in it. Miami will need to be ready for a defensive slugfest that Utah will bring. The final BCS Bowl game is going to be the Orange Bowl, being hosted by the ACC and Ohio State, who are coming off the devastating loss to Penn State, ruining their perfect season and a chance at defending their national title from last year. They will be facing off against Texas A&M. This should be a really fun game to watch with the two best offenses in the country going at it. Ohio State has the athletes and have looked dominant all year, leading to their number one ranking in offense and defense. Texas A&M will try to fight fire with fire as they bring their number 2 offense and number 2 passing offense to Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida. And that leaves us with the granddaddy of them all, the national title game, with the winner taking home the Crystal Football and the Coach's Trophy. Oregon was here last year, coming up short against Ohio State. Penn State is just coming off an incredible upset against the better than last year high-powered Ohio State. Oregon has a bunch of athletes on the offensive side of the ball, especially their dual-threat quarterback Ian Hyven. But Penn State just saw that with Ohio State and their athletes in CJ Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Trevion Henderson, who is the front runner to win the Heisman Trophy. And Penn State was able to control the ball and run away with a victory against a much better and more athletic team. They already have the recipe for success and are playing with house money right now, which makes them a very dangerous team it will be an exciting end to this season. And that will do it for this edition of the Promotion and Relegation Show. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to catch us this next week as Billings will be playing in their first bowl game of the dynasty against the runner-up in the Conference USA. Make sure to leave a like if you've enjoyed the video or the series as a whole, and be sure to subscribe if you are new and share the series with a friend, and we will see you next week as we put a bow on season 2 of this dynasty.